In a small, tight-knit town, two families had been inseparable for as long as anyone could remember. The families had lived on the same street for decades, and their children grew up together, creating lifelong bonds. Among them were two sets of twins, two brothers and two sisters, who were as close as could be. The brothers, Alex and Ben, were known for their easygoing nature and shared love for sports and adventure. The sisters, Emma and Lily, were just as close, both having a passion for art and an eye for creativity. They would spend countless hours together, drawing, painting, and sharing their dreams for the future. The families often spent time together at gatherings, barbecues, and holidays. It wasn't unusual for the four of them to be inseparable. People often joked that it was almost as if the twins were destined to meet one another, as they seemed to complete each other in the most natural way. The brothers had always been protective of the sisters, and the sisters admired the brothers' easy confidence and sense of humor. Growing up together, they shared countless memories, from late-night talks to secret adventures that only twins could understand. One fateful day, everything changed. It was a local community fair, one of the largest events of the year, and everyone in town gathered to celebrate. The atmosphere was alive with music, laughter, and the delicious smell of food filling the air. The twins were all excited, as they had attended every year since they were children. This time, however, there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Something different was about to happen. As the fair unfolded, Alex noticed a group of new faces he hadn't seen before. Among them were two beautiful young women, both with bright smiles and sparkling eyes. Emma and Lily, on the other hand, were drawn to the two handsome brothers who stood across from them, their friendly faces immediately catching their attention. It was a strange coincidence that the two sets of twins found each other in such a large crowd, but the moment they met, it was as if everything clicked. Their connection was instant. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, just an easy understanding between them. As the day went on, the two sets of twins spent more time together. They walked through the fairgrounds, laughed at the games, and shared stories about their childhoods. The brothers quickly found themselves drawn to Emma and Lily's wit and charm, while the sisters were equally fascinated by the brothers' easygoing personalities and the way they made everyone around them feel at ease. It was clear that something was starting to bloom between them, but no one could have predicted just how deep it would grow. By the end of the day, as the sun began to set and the fair lights twinkled in the evening sky, the twins exchanged their phone numbers, promising to meet again soon. There was an unspoken feeling between them, a sense of fate, of something special just beginning. They parted ways that night, each twin feeling as though they had just met someone they would never forget. The connection between the brothers and the sisters only grew stronger over the next few weeks. They would often meet up at each other's houses, go on outings together, and continue to bond over shared interests. Their lives seemed to revolve around each other, and it didn't take long for them to realize that they weren't just friends. There was something more, something deeper. Their love for one another grew quickly and naturally, as if they were meant to be together. What began as a casual friendship blossomed into something neither set of twins had ever expected. It was the start of a journey that would take them to places they could never have imagined, and a connection that would change everything. What once seemed like a simple meeting at the fair was the beginning of a love story neither of them could have ever predicted. After that memorable meeting at the fair, things between the two sets of twins moved quickly. The bond they shared grew stronger each day. Alex and Ben couldn't stop thinking about Emma and Lily, and the sisters felt the same. They spent their days talking on the phone, planning trips to local parks, and having long conversations about everything under the sun. It felt like they had known each other for years, even though it had only been a few weeks since they met. The connection was undeniable. The couple shared so much in common: their love for adventure, their sense of humor, and even their shared experiences growing up in the same small town. It was as though fate had brought them together. It wasn't long before Alex and Ben realized they had both fallen in love with Emma and Lily, and the sisters, who had been close for so long, couldn't help but feel the same way about the brothers. They quickly became inseparable, spending every free moment together. One evening, as the four of them sat at a quiet cafe, Alex looked across the table at Emma, his heart racing. It was clear to him that he wanted more than just friendship with her. Ben, sitting beside him, caught his eye, and without saying a word, they both knew what the other was thinking. The time had come to take the next step. The brothers, without hesitation, each turned to the sisters and asked them the same question. "Will you marry me?" The sisters looked at each other, shocked but equally excited. They had never imagined such a quick and bold proposal, but there was something undeniable about the bond they shared with the brothers. The love they felt for Alex and Ben was deep and genuine. Without a second thought, they said yes. The room was filled with laughter and cheers as the couples embraced, overjoyed by the new chapter of their lives that was about to begin. The decision to marry so quickly surprised many of their friends and family, but the couples were undeterred. Their love felt right. It felt like it was meant to be. They didn't need anyone's approval. They were happy, and that was all that mattered. The news spread quickly around town, and soon, plans were underway for a double wedding. The excitement was palpable as the families came together to prepare for the big day. The wedding preparations were just as magical as the couple's love story. Both sets of twins worked together to plan every detail, from choosing the perfect venue to picking out their wedding outfits. The sisters chose elegant dresses, while the brothers wore classic suits. They spent hours planning the ceremony, making sure everything was perfect. The whole town seemed to be buzzing with excitement for the wedding. People admired how the four of them had found each other so quickly and built such a strong bond. The day of the wedding arrived, and it was nothing short of a dream. The sun was shining brightly, the flowers were in full bloom, and everything seemed to fall into place. Alex and Ben stood at the altar, waiting eagerly for Emma and Lily to walk down the aisle. The sisters looked stunning, their smiles radiant as they walked toward the brothers, who couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The ceremony was beautiful and emotional, filled with laughter, happy tears, and vows that promised a lifetime of love and support. When the couples exchanged rings, it felt like the start of something even bigger. The bond between the brothers and sisters had only just begun, and their future together was full of possibilities. The wedding celebration continued long into the night, with dancing, laughter, and the kind of joy that only comes when two families come together as one. As the night drew to a close, the couples couldn't help but feel the excitement of the new life they had just begun. The love they shared had already become a foundation for something beautiful, and they couldn't wait to see what the future would bring. Little did they know, their journey was far from over, and life was about to throw them an unexpected twist that would change everything. The first few months of married life were everything Alex, Ben, Emma, and Lily had dreamed of. They were on a high, enjoying their time as newlyweds, savoring each moment of their shared life. The love they had for each other seemed perfect, effortless, like it was meant to be. They lived in a world of joy and new experiences, feeling like nothing could ever go wrong. They spent a lot of time together, traveling to nearby cities, taking weekend trips to the countryside, and exploring places they had always wanted to visit. Every day felt like an adventure. The four of them, twin brothers and twin sisters, were inseparable, doing everything together. It wasn't just about being a couple, they had become best friends. Whether it was a picnic at the park or just hanging out at one of their homes, it always felt right. Their bond seemed unbreakable. The couples also worked together on little projects, like redecorating their homes, helping each other with cooking, and planning for their future. They shared so much in common, from favorite books and movies to hobbies and dreams. The love they had for each other grew deeper each day, and it was easy to see that their marriages were built on a strong foundation of trust and friendship. For Emma and Lily, life seemed to be moving at the perfect pace. They were living their dream, having married the brothers they had grown so close to. For Alex and Ben, it was the same. They couldn't imagine life without Emma and Lily by their sides. They felt like the luckiest men in the world to have found two women who understood them so completely. It was the ideal marriage in their eyes. But beneath the surface, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Small, almost unnoticeable cracks began to form in the foundation of their relationships. They were subtle at first, little disagreements here and there, tiny misunderstandings that would have been easy to brush off. Emma would sometimes feel overwhelmed by the constant attention from the brothers, while Lily, who was quieter, started to feel like she wasn't being heard. Alex and Ben, on the other hand, found themselves dealing with their own pressures, trying to meet expectations from their families and friends, while still trying to keep their marriages strong. At first, they didn't acknowledge the tension. They were so focused on the joy of being newly married that they overlooked the growing distance between them. They kept telling themselves it was just a phase, that everything would be fine, and they'd work through any small bumps in the road. But as time went on, the differences in their personalities became more apparent. Emma and Lily, who had always been close, began to notice the subtle shifts in their relationships with the brothers. It wasn't that they didn't love each other anymore. It was more that they felt like something was changing. The fun and excitement of their early days of marriage started to fade, replaced by a quiet uncertainty. Alex and Ben, though still as supportive as ever, began to feel the weight of their own thoughts. They were both wondering if they had rushed into their marriages too quickly. At times, they found themselves questioning whether they had truly understood the depth of their emotions, or if they were simply swept up in the excitement of marrying their childhood friends. Despite the growing unease, neither couple voiced their concerns to each other. They continued to spend time together, but the moments of deep connection had become fewer and farther between. Each day felt a little more strained, as if they were pushing through something they weren't ready to confront. But no one said anything. It was as if everyone was waiting for the other to speak up first. What had once been a perfect fairy tale life was beginning to show signs of stress. It wasn't that they wanted to stop being together. It was just that the reality of marriage, with all its complexities, was slowly creeping in. The once easygoing relationships now felt a bit more complicated, and no one quite knew how to fix it. But despite the tension, they'd all held on, trying to keep the dream alive, hoping that the connection they once had would return to its original, joyful state. Little did they know, something far more surprising and life-changing was about to come their way. 1 year into their marriages, everything seemed to be going along just fine on the surface, but an unexpected event soon turned everything upside down. It all started innocently enough when the couples decided to go for a routine checkup. They had been encouraged by their doctor to have annual health exams, and it was just another one of those things that married couples do to ensure they're staying healthy. Alex, Ben, Emma, and Lily thought little of it. It was a simple matter, a quick visit to the doctor, nothing more. However, things took a strange turn when the results of their exams came back. The doctor, after going through the paperwork, had a serious expression on his face. He explained that there was a mix-up in the records. The doctor mentioned that they had been flagged as potential cases of mistaken identity due to some unusual details in their health histories. The couples were confused, not understanding what this meant. The doctor assured them that everything would be double-checked, but there was a certain tension in the air that they couldn't ignore. As the weeks passed, the situation became even more bizarre. The couples were contacted by the clinic, asking them to return for further testing. What had initially seemed like a minor issue slowly began to unravel into something far more serious. A few more tests were conducted, and the results confirmed something none of them could have ever expected. It turned out that Alex and Ben, despite being twin brothers, were not biologically related to each other. The same shocking truth was revealed for Emma and Lily. The twins had been adopted at birth, and their biological families were completely different from the ones they had grown up with. The revelation was so unbelievable that it took everyone a while to process. How could this be? How could they have lived their entire lives thinking they were one family, only to find out they were not biologically related at all. The news hit the brothers and sisters like a ton of bricks. For the twins, it was like their entire identity had been stripped away in an instant. Emma and Lily were stunned, unsure of how to process the shock. Their whole life, everything they knew about their family and their relationship, seemed to be built on a lie. How could this have happened? Why hadn't anyone told them? These questions raced through their minds, leaving them reeling. The discovery stirred up emotions none of them had ever expected to face. The bond they had shared for so long now felt complicated, even fragile. They began to question everything. Their relationships with each other, their families, their past. Could their love for each other be based on something deeper than biology? Or had it all been a coincidence, a twist of fate that had brought them together? In the midst of all this confusion, the couple started to withdraw from one another, not knowing how to handle the situation. Alex and Ben couldn't help but feel betrayed by the people they had trusted the most, their parents, who had never told them the truth about their origins. Emma and Lily, while equally shaken, tried to comfort each other, but found it difficult to share their feelings. The unexpected truth seemed to hang over them like a cloud that wouldn't go away. In the days that followed, their relationships were put to the test. The deep connection they had once shared now seemed fragile and uncertain. The tension was palpable, and the once perfect marriages were filled with silent doubts. As they struggled to understand what the truth meant for their future, each of them began to wonder, could their love survive this? Would they be able to rebuild the trust that had been shattered by such an unexpected revelation? 1 year into their marriages, everything seemed to be going along just fine on the surface, but an unexpected event soon turned everything upside down. It all started innocently enough when the couples decided to go for a routine checkup. They had been encouraged by their doctor to have annual health exams, and it was just another one of those things that married couples do to ensure they're staying healthy. Alex, Ben, Emma, and Lily thought little of it. It was a simple matter, a quick visit to the doctor, nothing more. However, things took a strange turn when the results of their exams came back. The doctor, after going through the paperwork, had a serious expression on his face. He explained that there was a mix-up in the records. The doctor mentioned that they had been flagged as potential cases of mistaken identity due to some unusual details in their health histories. The couples were confused, not understanding what this meant. The doctor assured them that everything would be double-checked, but there was a certain tension in the air that they couldn't ignore. As the weeks passed, the situation became even more bizarre. The couples were contacted by the clinic, asking them to return for further testing. What had initially seemed like a minor issue slowly began to unravel into something far more serious. A few more tests were conducted, and the results confirmed something none of them could have ever expected. It turned out that Alex and Ben, despite being twin brothers, were not biologically related to each other. The same shocking truth was revealed for Emma and Lily. The twins had been adopted at birth, and their biological families were completely different from the ones they had grown up with. The revelation was so unbelievable that it took everyone a while to process. How could this be? How could they have lived their entire lives thinking they were one family, only to find out they were not biologically related at all? The news hit the brothers and sisters like a ton of bricks. For the twins, it was like their entire identity had been stripped away in an instant. Emma and Lily were stunned, unsure of how to process the shock. Their whole life, everything they knew about their family and their relationship, seemed to be built on a lie. How could this have happened? Why hadn't anyone told them? These questions raced through their minds, leaving them reeling. The discovery stirred up emotions none of them had ever expected to face. The bond they had shared for so long now felt complicated, even fragile. They began to question everything. Their relationships with each other, their families, their past. Could their love for each other be based on something deeper than biology? Or had it all been a coincidence, a twist of fate that had brought them together? In the midst of all this confusion, The couple started to withdraw from one another, not knowing how to handle the situation. Alex and Ben couldn't help but feel betrayed by the people they had trusted the most, their parents, who had never told them the truth about their origins. Emma and Lily, while equally shaken, tried to comfort each other, but found it difficult to share their feelings. The unexpected truth seemed to hang over them like a cloud that wouldn't go away. In the days that followed, their relationships were put to the test. The deep connection they had once shared now seemed fragile and uncertain. The tension was palpable, and the once perfect marriages were filled with silent doubts. As they struggled to understand what the truth meant for their future, each of them began to wonder, could their love survive this? Would they be able to rebuild the trust that had been shattered by such an unexpected revelation? The tension that had built up between Alex, Ben, Emma, and Lily after their shocking discovery was overwhelming. The cracks in their relationships were no longer something they could ignore, but none of them knew how to fix the damage. They tried their best to go about life as usual, but everything felt off, as if they were all living in a world that didn't quite make sense anymore. The once strong bond between them now felt fragile and uncertain. After weeks of avoiding the tough conversations, Emma and Lily finally decided they needed to confront the truth. The silence between them was suffocating, and they could no longer pretend that everything was fine. They sat down one evening, just the two of them, to talk about what had happened and how it had affected them. The sisters had always been able to talk about anything, but now even their conversations felt awkward. "I don't know what to think anymore," Emma confessed, her voice trembling. "It feels like everything we knew is suddenly turned upside down." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I feel the same, but we can't ignore it. We need to figure out how to move forward." They both knew that talking about the issue was the only way they could begin to understand it. There was so much that had been left unsaid, so many questions they hadn't asked. They needed answers, not just for themselves, but for their marriages as well. If they were going to find a way to move past this, they had to face it head-on, even if it was uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Alex and Ben were also struggling with their own doubts. They had tried to avoid talking about the situation, each hoping the other would bring it up first. But the more time passed, the harder it became to ignore. They could feel the distance growing between them, and the thought of losing their bond as brothers hurt more than either of them was willing to admit. The discovery had shaken them to the core, but they hadn't yet found the courage to address their feelings with each other. Finally, one evening, Alex and Ben sat down to talk. There was an awkward silence between them as they both fumbled for the right words. Neither knew how to start, but it was clear they both needed to speak. "Ben," Alex began, his voice steady but uncertain. "I don't know what to make of all this. I keep thinking about what we've lost, what we thought we knew about ourselves. But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose us." Ben looked at him, his own emotions running deep. "I feel the same way. It's hard, Alex. Everything feels different now. But I don't want this to tear us apart. We're still brothers, even if we're not related by blood." The conversation didn't solve everything, but it was a start. They both realized that, despite the confusion and hurt, their bond was not something that could be easily broken. It might take time to heal, but they knew they couldn't give up on each other. The next step was to rebuild the trust and connection they had lost, and that wouldn't be easy. For Emma and Lily, their conversation was just as important. They needed to express how they felt, to get everything out in the open. They both admitted that they felt unsure of their place in the world, now that their past had been revealed as a lie. But they also knew that their love for Alex and Ben was real. It was complicated, but it was still there. "I think we need to get answers," Emma said softly. "We need to know where we came from. Maybe finding our biological families will help us understand who we are." Lily nodded, a sense of determination in her eyes. "I agree. We've always been so close to Alex and Ben, but maybe we need to understand ourselves better before we can fully move forward." So they made the decision together. They would search for their biological families. It wasn't going to be easy, and there were no guarantees, but they felt that finding answers was the only way to move forward. The journey would be long, and there were no promises that it would bring them the peace they were looking for. But it was a step toward understanding, and they were ready to take it. As they embarked on this new chapter, they knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be more struggles ahead, and the road to healing was uncertain. But they had each other, and that was a start. The search for their biological families was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything once again. But this time, they felt ready to face whatever came next. The decision to search for their biological families was a turning point for Alex, Ben, Emma, and Lily. They had always believed that their identities were shaped by the families who had raised them, but now everything had changed. Their lives had been built on a foundation of unknown truths, and it felt like they were standing at the edge of a vast unknown, unsure of what the future held. Despite the uncertainty, there was a sense of determination among them. They all knew that the only way to move forward was to find answers, even if it meant venturing into a past they never knew existed. For Emma and Lily, the search was a deeply personal journey. They had always known each other as sisters, but now they were both questioning the very foundation of their family. They decided to start by looking into adoption records and searching for any information about their biological parents. The sisters worked together, trying to piece together fragments of the past. Each new discovery brought mixed emotions, excitement at the possibility of finding their real families, but also a deep fear of what they might uncover. As they dug deeper, they uncovered some clues: old records, documents, and small details that seemed insignificant at the time, but now held meaning. They'd managed to track down a few distant relatives who had known about their biological families, but it wasn't easy. There were roadblocks, delays, and moments of doubt that made them wonder if they were doing the right thing. Every step forward seemed to bring them further away from the life they had known, but they couldn't stop. They had to know where they came from. Alex and Ben, though also grappling with their own feelings of loss and confusion, supported their wives in this journey. They, too, began to search for their own biological families, although the process was even more challenging for them. The idea of facing their past felt daunting, but they knew they couldn't avoid it any longer. Each day felt like a step into the unknown, but they did it together. They would talk late into the night, trying to make sense of what they had learned and what they still didn't know. It was a difficult process, and at times it felt like they were drifting farther apart, but their commitment to each other never wavered. In the midst of the search, they faced moments of doubt. What if they never found their biological families? What if the answers they were looking for only brought more questions? Each new lead felt like it could be the breakthrough they needed, but they often found themselves back at square one, searching through more records and reaching out to more people. It was exhausting, both emotionally and physically, but they refused to give up. As the weeks passed, the couples began to feel the strain of the search. The uncertainty weighed heavily on them. There were moments when they questioned their choices, wondering if the answers they were seeking would be worth the turmoil they were enduring. The strain on their relationships started to show in small ways, small arguments, brief moments of frustration, but they kept pushing forward because they knew there was no turning back. Eventually, after months of searching, they received a breakthrough. Emma and Lily were contacted by a distant relative who had more information about their biological parents. The news was unexpected, and it felt surreal. They had finally found a way to trace their roots. Alex and Ben, too, got a call that brought them one step closer to understanding their past. It was a moment of relief, but also one of apprehension. The truth was within their reach, but what would they learn when they uncovered it? The couples were both excited and anxious as they prepared to meet their biological families. They weren't sure what to expect, but they knew that this was the next step in their journey. The uncertainty still lingered, but they had made it this far together, and that gave them hope. They had taken the first step toward understanding who they were. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, They were determined to face it, side by side. The next chapter of their lives was about to unfold, and they were ready to face whatever truths it would reveal. The moment they had been waiting for had finally arrived. After months of searching and countless unanswered questions, Emma, Lily, Alex, and Ben were about to meet their biological families. The anticipation was palpable, and the air was thick with excitement and nervousness. They had no idea what to expect. The unknown loomed ahead, and yet there was a sense of hope that whatever they were about to learn would help them make sense of everything they had been through. The first meeting was with Emma and Lily's biological relatives. They traveled to a small town where their birth family lived. It was a quiet place, far from the bustling city life they had known, and it felt strange to be in a place that held the key to their past. They were nervous but hopeful as they arrived at the home of the woman who had reached out to them, an aunt who had known about their adoption, but never had the chance to meet them before. When they stepped inside, they were greeted by an older woman with warm eyes who welcomed them with open arms. The sisters were introduced to more family members, a group of people who had heard stories about them, but had never thought they would meet them in person. There was an undeniable sense of love in the air, but also a feeling of awkwardness as everyone tried to adjust to the new dynamic. Emma and Lily were overwhelmed by the warmth of their birth family, but they couldn't help but feel out of place, as if they were stepping into a life they had never known. The conversations were filled with questions about their childhood, their upbringing, and the years that had passed since their birth families had lost contact with them. The sisters learned about the struggles their biological parents had faced and why they had been placed for adoption. There were no easy answers, but there was a deep sense of understanding and empathy. They felt the pieces of their past starting to fall into place, even though it wasn't exactly what they had imagined. Meanwhile, Alex and Ben were meeting their biological relatives in a nearby town. They, too, were greeted with kindness, but there was a tension in the air. It was hard for both men to reconcile the image of the families they had known for their entire lives with the reality of these new relationships. They listened intently to stories about their biological parents and siblings, learning about lives they had never been a part of. There were moments of discomfort, but there was also a sense of relief. Finally, they were starting to understand their origins. As the day wore on, the couples realized that meeting their biological families had brought them a sense of closure they hadn't expected. While they didn't have all the answers, they had something more important, a deeper understanding of who they were and where they came from. The meeting with their biological families didn't change everything. It didn't erase the past or make the confusion go away, but it allowed them to see their lives from a new perspective. They weren't just defined by the families who had raised them, but by their own choices and the relationships they had built. When they returned home, the couple spent a long evening together reflecting on what they had learned. They talked about the highs and lows of the experience, sharing their feelings and discussing how it had changed them. There was no quick resolution, no magical fix to the challenges they had faced, but they all agreed on one thing: they were stronger for having gone through it together. The journey had been difficult, but it had brought them closer not just to their biological families, but to each other as well. In the end, they realized that love wasn't about blood. It was about the connections they had made and the life they had built. Their marriages, though tested by unexpected truths, had endured because of their deep commitment to one another. They had faced uncertainty, doubt, and confusion, but they had also found a way to move forward. Their future, though uncertain, was theirs to shape, and they knew they had the strength to face whatever came next. The journey was far from over, but they had taken a crucial step toward understanding themselves and the people they loved. As they looked ahead, they knew that the answers they sought had given them more than just clarity. It had given them the freedom to be who they truly were, and to embrace the families they had built and the ones they had discovered. It was a new beginning, one that would continue to unfold, but they felt ready to face it together.